Chapter 2. How Pilk Won the Day. Back at the end of the Stone Age, more than 4,000 years ago, there was a boy. Now, I can't remember his name because it was such a long time ago, but I'm going to give him the name Pilk because, well, it sounds about right. And there was something you need to know about Pilk, and this is this. Pilk was smart. Smarter than the average Stone Age man. He wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but he was definitely one step further up the evolutionary ladder, and it kept him out of a lot of trouble. He wasn't sure why he seemed to be smarter than most. It was just that he seemed to be able to work things out that the other Stone Age people could not. People like Tufa and Atty. But I'll tell you about them a little bit later, because this story is about Pilk, the smartest Stone Age boy alive. He had discovered, for instance, that if he tied a sharp stone to the end of a long stick, then he had a tool with which he could do all kinds of things, like catch fish and hunt rabbits, and even defend himself from the scary beasts that roamed through the forest. But his pride and glory was his shoulder bag, the one that he had made himself, with some animal hide and a bone needle to sew it together. He loved that shoulder bag. It was so useful. He wondered why everyone didn't have one. He found it handy for carrying things like hammers and sharp stones, and a small fishing net, and other objects that he found while wandering around that might come in useful later. I must say, though, that Pilk wasn't the only intelligent person around. For instance, there was Nina. She was the tribe's elder, a wise old woman, the wisest person that Pilk knew. She was a storyteller, like me, and a guide, and a teacher as well, and Pilk loved her. She seemed to have done everything, and been everywhere, and knew everything that you needed to know about the world that they lived in. Pilk would often sit and listen and get lost in her stories for hours and hours. Stories about how she walked for miles across deserts and frozen landscapes, and how she had learned to gather seeds and grow them into plants for food, and when to plant them so they had the best chance to grow, and even stories about gods in the stars. And best of all, Nina knew where to find delicious yellow fruit, in the forest down by the lagoon, where she used to go when she was younger, as young as Pilk was now. "If you need to know anything, Pilk," she had told him on more than one occasion, "you know you can always come to me because Nina normally knows." And it was true. Whatever question Pilk had, Nina knew the answer. "Oh, and if you happen to be going down near the lagoon in the forest," she would sometimes add, "I would be ever so pleased if you could bring me back a lovely yellow fruit. I'm a little old to go myself now, but they're delicious." And she would smile, a cheeky but kind smile, that won Pilk over every time. But I mustn't forget someone else, because I told you that Pilk was the smartest boy in the Stone Age world, and that's true. But there was one other person who was at least as smart as Pilk, or maybe even smarter, and she was a girl, a Stone Age girl, about the same age as Pilk, and her name was Fianna, and who, if Pilk was honest, he had a bit of a soft spot for, at least more than he could admit. The thing about Fianna was she was an extremely quick learner. She would watch and learn, and then do the thing that she had just seen even better than the person she had just seen doing it. She had taken Pilk's bag and made herself a better one, with a thin strap and a small pouch, which Pilk had to admit was something of an improvement, of sorts. Vienna was also very good at coming up with her own great ideas. She had shown Pilk how to make shoes out of rough hide and twine and pieces of thick leather to protect his feet in the forest. They were amazing. But the thing that Pilk most admired about Vienna was her bow and arrow. She had made it herself, out of some long bendy wood and twisted twine, and she was brilliant with it. Vienna could hit anything from 20 metres away, and not even Pilk was that accurate with his spear. But Pilk wasn't jealous of Vienna. He admired her too much, and they looked out for each other and learned things off each other, and they made a pretty useful partnership. Anyway, this story begins at the break of one particular day when Pilk was woken by the tribe singing and praying and celebrating the rising of another sun. That's what people used to do, you know, pray to the rising sun. You see, they were never quite sure where the sun went at night, and they were frightened that it wouldn't rise the next day. So when the sun did rise, they were thankful, and they celebrated it by cheering and clapping and dancing and praying to the gods. But Pilk didn't pray to the gods of the sun. He was fairly confident that the sun would rise each day, and so far he had always been right. And anyway, he had other things on his mind, like fruit. Ooh. Do you know what I fancy? Pilk said to himself, stretching and yawning as he got up from his comfortable fur-lined bed. I would really like a yellow fruit from the forest. Nina knows everything, and she told me exactly where to find them, so perhaps I'll bring a fruit back for her as well. I think she would like that, and maybe she'll tell me another one of her stories. Yes, that's what I'll do. So Pilk grabbed his spear and his bag, and he set off into the woods to get some yellow fruit down by the lagoon. He knew the path well, because he had put markers to help him find his way, long sticks with other sticks tied to them that were fairly easy to spot if you knew what you were looking for. The yellow fruit was some way inside the forest, and he knew that he had to be wary because wild, dangerous beasts roamed this part of the forest. But he was careful, and he had his trusty spear and a stone sling that Vienna had made for him, which made him feel safe, at least as safe as he could be. After some time thrashing through the woods with an axe and his spear, he came to the lagoon, and he looked up into the branches to see if he could see any fruit. There, some way above his head, he could see the yellow fruit, but it was well out of his reach, so he knew he had to climb to get it. But Pilk was a pretty good climber, and it wasn't long before he was just a little more than an arm's length out of reach of the fruit. But then he heard a rustling in the bushes below him. He froze on the branch where he was perched and tried not to make a sound. I hope it's not a wild boar or a mad bear or a hungry saber-toothed tiger, he thought to himself, even though he wasn't sure if saber-toothed tigers existed. Just then, out of the bushes came an angry-looking ape. Not a fully grown ape, but he knew it was better not to tackle it, because even a young ape was extremely strong and very dangerous. Pilk didn't dare make a sound, and waited to see what the ape did next. The angry ape ambled about, looking up into the branches, and Pilk guessed that he must be looking for yellow fruit like he had been doing only minutes before. But then the ape looked up and spotted a fruit just above Pilk's head. Oh, trust my luck, Pilk thought. Then the ape started to climb the tree, the same tree, the one that Pilk was in. Oh, no, whispered Pilk. Why couldn't you find another tree? What am I going to do? Pilk thought. I'm trapped. He tried to think quickly, and then he hatched a crazy plan. I really hope this is going to work, he said, and he quickly scrambled up the branches, grabbed the yellow fruit, shoved it in his bag, and pulled out a fishing net. Then, without another moment's thought, he leapt off the branch, holding the net out above his head. Everything became a blur. "Please work," he cried as he plummeted towards the ground. "I haven't really thought this through." Well, maybe it was dumb luck, or maybe it was genius, but his net somehow caught one of the lower branches and it bent with his weight and slowed his fall. But he was still some way above the ground. "This is it," he cried. "It's now or never," and he let go of the net. There was an almighty ker-splash, and Pilk landed in the lagoon. He knew it was nearby, but he hadn't realised it was just below him, and it had saved his life. When he came back up to the water's surface and realised that he hadn't broken any bones, he cheered. He couldn't believe his luck. He had just survived a death-defying leap. Then he remembered where he was, and suddenly thought, "I'd better not hang around here. That ape might have worked out what's going on." So he swam across to the far side of the lagoon, pulled himself out, and turned to look back to where he had just come from. He could see the angry young ape still in the tree, looking a bit confused, as if to say, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm sure there was a yellow fruit here before." Pilk, feeling safe now on his side of the lagoon, reached into the bag and took out the golden fruit, and held it above his head like a prized trophy. I can't believe it," he laughed. "I won it! I won the yellow fruit!" And he kissed it as if it was the most precious thing ever. "You took some fighting for," he said, and then he popped the fruit back into his bag and set off for home, feeling ever so pleased with himself. He had managed to survive an angry ape, a deadly fall, a dip in the lagoon, and now he had his fruit as a reward, and a brilliant story to tell Nina. Oh, and maybe he would tell Fiona the story as well.